Now we got recording started. Okay, so let's get rolling. Okay, the topic I'll be discussing is search queries with Boolean operators. And for the starter, we're going to talk about the quotation marks, the enforcer that turns the search query into a mandatory returned results that should include anything you place inside of the quotation mark. So that's going to be the start. And I believe these slides are animated. So I'll just keep clicking and see where it takes me. So it says how to build basic search queries with Booleans. Quotes, quotation marks. What do we do with the quotation marks? What is their usefulness for us to build the search queries? Never mind. Okay, it's something which is absolutely very basic, but still I got to run by you with what is the difference between the individual keywords versus a search term. So when I use the word term or search term, it's usually more than one word of which is making it into a search phrase. So that is a search term. Individual words that make the search term, we call them keywords. So in the first example, you could see that three words, internet research specialists, individually we call them keywords. And without placing them within quotation marks, we are asking the search to look for all of these in the sequence it is placed, or find at least one from the three, or include as many of these three words as possible in the search results. That's all it means. Just because they are treated as individual keywords, and by default action of the search, as I mentioned, it would first attempt assuming that there is a plus sign in between each word with the space that you've given it. So it's going to first try to find all three of them in the same sequence, but not as a mandatory option. It is basically giving it the flexibility to first try finding all three in the sequence. And if not, it may just find any of these or find any combination of these words in whatever sequence it is available as popular search term. So it's not as controlled a search query as we would make it later when we start putting things within quotation marks. In the second example, we want to now make sure that the search is going to look for all three of these in the same sequence you have placed them within quotation marks. And the three of these together would form a search term, which is really a search phrase. So it keeps the integrity of the sequence of how it should appear in your search results. And the second utility of the quotation marks is to enforce or to force the search to find these three in the search results. Okay. So it is more controlled, and it is used to build a search phrase or put the words together as a sequential set of words that has a meaning, which needs to be forced for the search to find exactly as it is, as if it is a mirror image of it. So this is the example of putting three together to make sure we get these three coming back to us, as you can see in your search box. When we look at the first example, these three words are outside of the quotes, or none of them are placed inside of the quotes. So basically, this is how usually people write it, internet research specialist. What happens when you do that is shown in list A as examples of how the search is going to interpret it. And then we'll compare it with the three words inside of the code to see the behavior of search as it returns the results back. In the list one, you could see first, by default, search attempts to return all three terms as displayed verbatim without quotations. So it is assumed to have a plus sign in between all three of these, or should be at least two plus signs placed here. Not that you have to do it, but it is assumed. It is the default action of the search. But at the same time, it cannot enforce it. Like it wouldn't guarantee that all three would appear in the same sequence. Then in the second one, you can see that it might just replace the placement of the words or shuffle them without regards to your sequence in which you'd like it to return. So this is behavior number two. We see moving placement of terms. That could happen. In three, what might happen is that it would start to to combine certain words and leave out certain word isolated as single words. Like, for example, the specialist may be found somewhere in the content page separate from internet search, whereas internet search may combine together, appear as another term not attached to the word specialist. So this is the third action. The fourth might be that certain words might be substituted, as in stemming and lemmatization process, where the word researcher can be replaced by the word search, right? And again, the sequence is not guaranteed. So this is another action that might happen. So you can see without quotes that this is the cost of not putting it inside of the quotation. But uh, at times we do want to leave certain words outside of the quotation marks as well, or their combination without quotes, and that we do by design or by strategy. And I'll tell you why we do that intentionally. But right now, let's look at 4, 5 as another example of how the behavior might be. Then we've got an example 6, 7, and 8. In this one, you could see that it'll start to make combination with words, all different combinations. So internet search, research, internet specialist, research specialist, without regard to the sequence, but rather using these words in different combinations. Um, and it might occur with different combination in the same content page. So this could be another uncontrolled action which is giving a lot of flexibility for the search engine to return as it pleases. Now we look at sorry, this we've done. I'm struggling with animation sometimes, but there was another slide. I don't see it here. Okay, just give me a moment. I'll pull another one because I remember the slides so I can see if something is moved or is not there. Still, I want to show you the slide I'm talking about. Let's go down a little bit. This one. Okay, so I'm going to run it. Now, we've done number one. So ignore number one. Let's look at number two. When we have these three inside of the quotes, three words, Never mind the color. So just think of it as one search phrase or one search term. What we do at times is that we combine certain words and put them within quotes if we want to break it into something that we want returned mandatory with emphasis on certain combinations to be present. And there could be a word that we may put outside of the quotation intentionally so that the word, as in this example, B1, we took the word specialist out from the sequence and took it basically out of the quotes and put the internet research inside of the quotation marks. So why we did that, there could be a reason. One reason could be that I definitely would want internet research to appear as primary keywords and the most important words together that should show in my search results. Whereas the word specialist, I may not want or force the search to bring back only because I'm not sure if the word specialist in combination with the word internet research might be found, or I'm not sure if the word specialist is the right one, or you can be replaced by few other words. So to give the search engine the ability to play with it a little and find the best match or something similar to the word specialist, just because it is not inside of the quotation, the search engine can, you know, can do many things and not be forced to include specialist along with internet research. But it should be a word that can be found or better found if available with the wordings internet research in the content pages return. Another advantage of using quotation marks is we can keep moving the quotation marks to check for certain words to appear together if we are not sure how they're combined or we find the results are not satisfactory. So what we could do is we could then start to take out one of the words outside of the quotes and as an example too, we took the word internet outside of the three words and emphasized on research specialist to be mandatory return in the results. Now, between one and two, it makes sense because you understand how quotation marks are used to combine words or make it into a search phrase. But in number three, a situation differs a little bit. Here, I have put the words, all three words, separately inside of the quotation or within quotes. I'm not sure if you have seen this scenario before or you've tried it before, but here I'm going to show the utility of using quotation marks beyond just making or using it to build search phrases or when you want to combine words. So there is another utilization. That's what number three is presenting. Um, The second utility or the reason why we put individual words inside of quotes is that quotation marks is also an enforcer or it is the behavior of a search to return the uh, the words that you put inside of the quote as mandatory return, meaning that it has to be present in your search results, or the content pages return must have three words: internet, research, and specialist, because they're placed inside of quotes individually. Yet, this type of structure of query will not ensure that all three can be present in the same sequence because we are not making it into a search phrase. Yet we are emphasizing that all three be present wherever they are placed on those content pages return. So maybe the word internet may appear three times in three different paras or one para, or research can occur somewhere else, but not together with specialist, even though it's not that research specialist, for instance, is um, needs to be combined, but it may come as together. But like what I'm trying to get to is that the quotation, whatever you put inside of the quotes, becomes a mandatory return. That's all I'm saying. So how many of you knew the about putting individual keywords inside of the quotes?
I did.
Mike, eh?
Yeah, I saw one of your earlier things on YouTube. That's where I first learned about the quotes, and I started playing with the
Okay,
quotes. And you're right,
right.
it's really good.
So
Yeah,
this is the
I've also
reason.
played around with it.
Okay, so you have an idea, but it is a very important concept. So many, I mean, I don't see that explained well enough, or it's not as commonly explained when you go on the internet and look for, how the quotation marks are used. It's just typically just, how it makes it into a search phrase, and they just beat the same drum over and over, but never talk about the emphasis part. Anyway, so this was the concept I want cleared. Now I want to go back to the previous slides. Okay. This is basically showing how, as an illustration, obviously it's not like it's a real thing, but just an illustration. So internet research specialists, when we use it within quotation marks, the effect is that the return pages you get, for instance, in checkme.com, it's say some domain, the page jobs.com just appears. And in that page, you will find that all three are present together, as you can see. And if you compare it with how you put the query with three of these words individually placed within quotation marks, the impact would be, as you can see where the arrows are taking you, you can see that the words are there and definitely they will appear in the search results, but in different, the placement would be different, or they can even come in combination, like research specialists taken out and then combined together. So these are the two effects between how you're going to use the quotation marks. Okay. Um, hmm. One of the things about quotation marks in closed statement or your search phrase that you build is that some of the stop words that we talked about before, the ones that you see in the red font, these words, if not placed inside of the quotes or don't become part of something which is held inside of the quotation mark, will be ignored by the search. We know that the quotation marks forces everything that is placed inside of it to be recognized as if it is part of the whole structure of your statement or the search phrase. So if you use the symbols, such as the ones that are highlighted, like with the exception of asterisks. By the way, I will emphasize that asterisk is the only symbol which you place inside of the quotes or is anywhere present inside of the quote, the behavior will be different. But let's suppose the other operator, the other stop notation or stop word is the and sign. And if it is placed somewhere inside of the quoted search phrase, will be assumed to have a significance for the search to include that as if it is part of that entire statement, and it should be found exactly as a mirror image, or it should be compared and matched exactly how it is presented inside of the quotation marks. So even though the end sign or the question mark is not recognized if it is outside of the quote somewhere, because it is a stop notation and would not have any significance, but all of a sudden it will have a primary significance to be present or to be matched if placed inside of the quoted statement. The exception I told you about the asterisk, we will talk about the asterisk later, because asterisk has a different meaning for the search. And the only symbol which would act differently or will not be matched as if it is a textual word or a text, something that can be matched, but rather would uh, become a placement symbol, which is a temporary holding place for something missing. So that's why the steric has a different significance. Um, Compared to this, any other thing that you put inside of quote will be recognized and be matched. So that is the important part. Uh, in these sample queries, which is example 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, we would like to see how the quotation marks can be leveraged for finding certain things or making a structure of the search query by moving, shifting them, or putting some of the words inside, other words you can put outside, and for what reason. So starting with the first example, for instance, we have, and I'm going to be using the notepad, okay, as a whiteboard, just so I can better explain things. Um, I have, and these will be sitting in your class notes in the Dropbox later, because that's where I'm saving them. Um, these examples, I'm going to, for now, just to avoid a lot of writing, I'm going to first of all zoom in a little so that it's big enough for everyone to see clearly. I think this should be clear enough. So never mind what's above the line. I'm going to do EXM. Here I'm taken the example of the query that is shown in the slide. And you can see that the entire search term has got, you know, um, it is a long search term, okay, and it is a formula of some sort, an organic acid. Uh, it's got a name, pyridine carboxylic, and then there is a gap and it says acid after. So basically, if I want to dissect it a little bit to see what is the breakdown of the number of words, how we can tell or separate them into two different words, uh, taking the quotation marks off for now, and I'm calling it 1.1. So in this one, you could see that 3, 6, then you've got dash, then you've got dichloro, then dash 2, all of it without any gaps in between what is next to each other. You can see that it is making it into one single search word or a key term or a single word. And what comes after the gap that we have intentionally left, um, the word acid makes acid the second word in this statement or in this query. So basically, it is the two words. We can tell the search that they are two separate words only because there is a gap between carboxylic and the word acid. So the gap in between the two words separate them as in two individual words or two individual key terms. Then we look at example 2, and supposing if I by mistake leave a gap here, it automatically makes it into three search terms or three search words or three keywords, okay, just because of this gap. And supposing I had used something where the 3 is separated from the comma, then the comma is a stop word and it will not be recognized and it will be dropped totally. The query will start from 6 onwards. And the third example, I'm showing these examples because these are something that for now, these are conceptual, but when you actually are doing your search queries, but putting longer search terms and, playing with the words here and there, and you're using dashes and commas, then you might relate to what I just explained so that you can make corrections if there is a problem in return results. I'm going to take another example. Now, supposing there is a gap between 6 and this dash over here, what this will do is something that we'd like to call as negative words, or words that would be interpreted as to be taken out from the search, just because here the dash has changed the property, and instead of dash, the search would treat it as a minus sign. And when we do booleans and uses minus sign right next to the term we want eliminated, it is called a negative term, or something that we intentionally want to be taken out from our search results. So therefore, the property of the dash would change on account of the gap that you have left. So you have to be mindful when you're writing these kind of formulas, and especially where certain stop words or symbols are used, don't leave a gap. That will create a problem. Then in example 2, so this is more about the gaps, okay? In example 2, we go back to the slides and see what it is telling us. All right. In this example 2, I want to talk about numbers and how the numbers are treated by the search engine. As you know, the search engine has uh, it has a machine learning ability, and on top of that, it has accumulated a wealth of information that it relates to or connects with, assumes, you could say, or impose at times its own wisdom. So when we are doing example 2, that's exactly what I'm going to explain, is how the search would treat certain way of writing your queries, especially when you're using numbers. The first now, where I'm putting these brackets, it's just a symbolic of a address bar. Okay, so it has no meaning for you to put it in the search or put it in the query. This is not real. This is just a simulation. So anything inside of it is considered one search query example. So in the first instance, you could see we've put bold, and I don't know, some of the students start correcting me on, on how there was a soap opera. Everybody in US knows about it, and so does many people around the world. So it was very famous. So I don't have to write the whole thing. I just assume that it is bold and beautiful. I know it was the bold and the beautiful. But anyway, bold and the beautiful is within quotation marks. And along with, or right next to it, is 1-6. Now, what is this for? The search engine knows from the previous searches that people used to do with relationship to, or with reference to the episodes and season number and so on. Season 1, episode 6, um, somewhat in that sense. The search engine picked on it and started creating its own assumption database. I would just call it assumption database for now, because it may be that it might not be your intention to look for what the search engine wants to connect it with. So there could be a disconnect there. But however, in this case, what I'm explaining is that when I put bold and the beautiful and I use 1-6, it is going to assume that you're talking about season 1 and episode 6. Why it is doing it, how would it know, and how would it know it's bold and beautiful, is because it starts to create sense or make sense out of combination and sequence in which you place your terms in the search box. So it knows Bold and Beautiful is a play, is a famous play, and 1-6 means that it is the sixth part of one, or it is the season one and episode six. So this happens also, even though you may be looking for something in literature which has these wordings, and 1-6 could mean something different. But think of it as if you can kind of get a sense when you get the results coming back to you. You would see that it is talking about seasons and episodes. So that's what I'm trying to say. And the next thing that I want to emphasize is the quotation marks. Now, way of writing, I mean, this query is correct to work with. However, at times you may make a mistake and put Bold and Beautiful and put 1-6 inside of the quotation marks. That would create a problem. That is another thing that I want to emphasize, that the placement of quotation marks and leaving out certain words or certain terms outside of the quotes is a better option. And I'll show you why. As we progressively go to the other examples, you will see the reason. Similarly, if it is Bold and Beautiful and you wrote 1 divided by 6 or 1/6, it would again mean the same thing as 1-6, because here again the search engine is making its assumption. It's relating to what's inside of the quotes. And with reference to what you have mentioned in the quote, it would act to look for season 1, episode 6. On the other hand, you could also force this if it is not recognizing 1/6 for some reason, or there is some other popular, you could say, emphasis somehow created that makes 1/6 substitute something else, or you feel that it is not bringing the season, or it's not recognizing it as 1/6 being episodes and the season, you can put 1-6 within quotation marks as well. But in the example, the third one where I'm pointing to, you could see that it is segmented as two search terms, both within quotations. So Bold and Beautiful, I put within quotes, 1-6, I put within quotes. So to force it, because what could be the possibility if 1/6 is not recognized, or 1-6 is not recognized? Maybe it is substituting it with something else, or it is not making a relationship with Bold and Beautiful as a play. And so it has decided to, interpret it as a different outcome, not exactly what you want. So you want to emphasize 1-6, put it within quotes and see what comes back to you. Okay. So if even that doesn't work, then you just simply write season 1, episode, so you can continue to improve on it, make it better, more context. In this one, which is the last one that I'm showing as incorrect, is because supposing I put Bold and Beautiful, and after that I put 1/6 within quotations. Now here the search is going to act as if you want all of these wordings with the word beautiful um, ending here, and 1/6 is a continuation of the statement, continuation of the phrase. And if the exact match is not found, which a lot of times you make a mistake, even I make those mistakes of thinking that it may occur as if as it is written in the sequence it is held to be having an exact match, or be exactly how it is stated in for matching reasons in the content pages. But if it is not found as exact, uh, it will not return any results, even though the information is there in the indexing system, but it will not get it, because what you are saying is to match everything in the same sequence, and it may not be there. So what you would do is then you would push the quotation marks towards the word beautiful. The quotation mark closed would make Bold and Beautiful separated from 1/6. It's by design, that's what you will do. In example 3, we've got market research. We've got 3 search terms. Okay. And this example 3 is for me to describe and explain how this search query can be improved by moving the words, eliminating certain words, making it into a short search query. So I will have to then revert back to my notepad and copy this and see how we can improve this statement. And maybe you can also pitch in and help me to make it into a better search query, just in the word sense, not based on adding operators. We're just playing with the quotation marks right now. Okay, so let's look at number 2 here. How can I improve on this query? That would be my intention. So let's say we do A, and now I'm going to start to do it the best way I can, and maybe you can help me and tell me if I can make it better. So we will go progressively from A to B to C, just to see what version could be the best to use. Okay. So let's suppose I'm going to start with the wordings that are repeated. First of all, what is the idea behind this search query? Idea is to find market research on market research industry. Okay. And within market research industry, we might be able to find important key information which is more targeted towards finding the market research demand. Market research as a profession or as a professional research is what I mean, or what I understand. So that could be the idea. Second thing is that let's look at the option to make it short, concise, and get some repeated words eliminated. So I'm seeing market research as a common word, and I see the word report is repeated constantly. So let me just get rid of the word report. And I'm just going to leave one instance of report outside for now. So market research here is also duplicated. So I'm going to get rid of this. Now I have all the words, but it is not making sense for when I want to look for the market research demand, because it is not gelling. Yet market research together has to appear as two words or one search term. So I have to put it within quotation marks. So what I would do is, I guess, so this is the first, let's just say this is A. Now I want to do B version of it, maybe expand on what I wrote in A and see how I can improve it. Market research. Now I might want to do it this way. Maybe B is better than A, I think. Let's see if we can do C. So in C, I'm going to let you tell me what could be a better way of restructuring the words using the quotation marks only and making it or improving on B. So what we should be doing in C, perhaps any one of you may want to, give me some advice or whatever you think. Don't worry if it's correct, incorrect, or I mean, just put your thinking uh, um, into, giving some suggestions. It doesn't have to be accurate. I don't expect that.
One idea that I had was to put quotation marks around the word report as well,
Okay.
in order to perhaps get
Emphasize.
results that are mainly reports.
Okay. What if there is another word like study in there? Would it not substitute report? I'm just wondering. Because, so what happens? Now, if I give you one more operator, which we haven't started working on it, but I'm sure you're all familiar with it. The Boolean or, would that help in, say, including the word study in case the word study is there?
I would say yes.
Yep.
Okay. So for or, let's suppose I use a symbol, vertical bar. It's easy for me. And I say report or study. Here, when you are using the or sign and you are using the quotation marks, the word report does not become a mandatory return. Remember that. That's a rule we're going to get to later. But what happens is at this time, if I remove the quotation marks in this query, what could happen? Possibly that would distort the meaning or make it into another or give wrong signals, is because this word demand might add or get connected with report as if these two are together. Demand report, for instance. Even though we have used or to give or compare it with the word report, given the option that find either study or report, yet it might just turn up that the search engine would think demand report could be one term or study could be another. So study is not going anywhere except that the meaning of the word report gets changed because there's no guarantees without quotes that these two might just connect automatically or assume to be two words together. So in another sense, I have just explained another concept which you can add to the utility of the quotation mark, is when I put the word report within quotes, what I've done here is I've separated the word demand from the word report, and now the word report is considered to be a separate unity, separate keywords, and will not connect with the word demand. So this part I have corrected just because you mentioned put report in quotation. This just came to my mind, a concept which I would have explained at a later time, but I'm giving you the concept now, is that it also acts at times to separate certain words which are which you don't want to be auto connected, yet you don't want those two words to be put inside of the quotes either. So if I want report to be compared with the word study, without emphasizing that report is mandatory, here the quotation marks is used for yet another reason. This is the third reason, that instead of emphasis, it is now acting as if it is a word that is separate from the word demand. And at the same time, it is going to compare and give an option to the search to find either study or find the word report. So now it is a perfect query. given that we don't want demand to be a mandatory data. Let's suppose the report would be sufficient or the study should be sufficient with reference to market research industry. We might be able to find something that has a word demand in it, or if demand is not as important, then in the report and the study, you could find something similar that points to the nature of demand or something to do with demand of market research industry or prospects of or whatever could be considered as the growth in the industry, something similar to that. So this is all that I would think that we need to talk about as far as improving the search query. C is better than B for me. B is better than A. The query number 2, which we have discussed, is an example of how we can eliminate duplicate, move the quotation marks. So that part we finish, and I think it's um, time for us to take a coffee break. You think so? Let's do that. So take 10 minutes. I will be back shortly, and then we'll continue with the quotation marks and see how the quotation marks would replace the Boolean A and D operator. Obviously, we're going to start with introducing the Booleans. There are 3 Booleans. But the important concept of how one of the Boolean operators like A and D is now replaced by the quotation marks, that's what we are going to get to. And at the same time, I'm going to leave you with this thought. At the same time, A and D works just fine, but not required and not recommended anymore by Google, just because it thinks the quotation mark would do the same thing. However, A and D does work, but not encouraged for a reason. So that's what we will do. Okay, James, you are back. It's restarted. Seems everything is working. Your mic is on. I can see that.
Everything okay. Thanks very much.
Everything. Okay, sure. So we can get started. How are we doing, Dorothy? So far, so good?
So far, so
Do you
good.
think? Okay. All right. Okay, Justin, Mike, we'll get started. I'll continue with the examples. By the way, whatever I write in the notes here in the notepad, and I'm going to put it in your Dropbox, as I mentioned, I would expect that you would have find some time to practice with these queries just to get a sense of how, of whatever explained is actually executed as described. And if you'd like, you can make some notes if things are not working as suggested. And that would be the hands-on side for you to do back home. But at the same time, don't think that we won't be doing the queries. We will be putting this into action. We'll do it at the right time after we are done with the Booleans. That complete concept is cleared up, and then we will be ready to actually run some of those examples. So that's how I plan it. And I just wanted to put this on record that we will be doing a lot of hands-on practice. There would be far too many queries. There are at least 400 of different sorts of queries in the book. So there is plenty in there for us to select from and work on it. And we'll do that later. So coming back to the slide, we are continuing with these examples. Now we look at example 4, which has 5 versions of the searches using the quotation marks, moving the quotation marks. So okay, in 4, we have one query which says, and it's without any quotation marks, Steve Jobs important life lessons. And right next to it, you can see we got a lot many results than expected, and it makes it really very difficult to go through so many of the results, and we don't need these. So this is without quotation marks. What is important is the way we are going to use quotation marks from in query 2 through 5. And the second one, you can see we have written important life lessons as I guess it is a speech, kind of, uh, you could say that a subject of this speech by Steve Jobs. He gave this speech in Stanford University at some point. And we want to find that speech specifically. I'm sure you can find it easily because it is famous enough just by using these wordings, but because it's an illustration and we are more focused on figuring out what could be the better outcome out of what we are using between 2 and 5. So we will just look at the concept part. The Steve Jobs important life lessons gave 170,000 results. The word Steve Jobs was outside of the quotation marks. And because, we like to think of the least search results as being more precise or more precision is in the result pages, because the number of results are reduced, may not always be the criteria for something that we call more targeted or more focused search results. There are other factors also that you have to look at. So in the third one, we have put the entire statement, Steve Jobs important life lesson, as if it is one continuation of a search phrase or it's a search term, which needs to be matched exactly. And so we got only 5 search results. Okay. Then compare this number 3 with number 4, where we put the word Steve Jobs in quotation, important life lessons also in quotation, and then we added a word speech as a context. Okay. And we got 51,700 results. Compare 4 to 5, we got 187,000 results because we used the wording Steve Jobs' speech as 3 different words. In fact, the word Steve Jobs, and I must emphasize here that if the 2 words together make a name which is famous enough that automatically it is connected or assumed to be the name of that person, that famous person, invariably you will keep seeing that it is bringing the results of for Steve Jobs, because Steve Jobs, everybody knows him. However, if the word Jobs was not famous enough along with the word Steve, the first name, Jobs might be treated as a word or as something to do with the jobs and not as the part of the name. So number 4, we got 187,000 results. However, we found that the 5 results were not good enough, and the results that were 51,700 were more relevant. So relevance is also very important, not just the number of results. Why we feel the result in 4 was more to our satisfaction is because we phrased everything correctly, we separated them correctly, we used a context using the word speech without making it mandatory to be part of a sentence, which may or may not be there as a sentence to compare with. So the word speech outside of the quote helped. They would have used some other word, but still the emphasis was on the 2 primary keywords. One was the object, that was important life lesson, title of the speech, and the subject was Steve Jobs. So we put these 2 as 2 terms inside of the quotes, and speech we left intentionally outside. what really affected or gave incorrect results or not as satisfactory result in number 3 is because when we look at the statement that is inside of quotes, it is including the title of the speech as important life lessons, and this is in continuation from the name of Steve Jobs and not necessarily would connect together as one long sentence to compare with the content pages. So that's why it did bring the results, but not as up to the standard of what we require. So 4 was better than 5 and better than 3 and 2 and 1. So that's the reason why we gave example 4 to emphasize the importance of how you move quotation marks and put certain terms as separate segments or separate uh, search phrases. Okay. In number 5, we are showing an example of something we call a stop word, which even though we say stop words, but it also means stop notations or notations which otherwise won't be recognized if they're outside of the quotation mark. So if it is a question you're posing or you want something to be answered as a question, and whereas the search engine would not recognize anything as a question, even if you put a question mark at the end of it. Even if you use the words like what, where, when, as in a question, it would treat them as stop words. So with that kind of a situation, we would like to use the quotation marks, and we can structure our or pose our question as shown in A, B, C, and D. In A, one way of doing it is that we wrote internet research 2 words and put the question mark within quotation. So we emphasize that any pages that are found should have either the word internet or internet research together, or research and internet, not in the same sequence. However, with relationship to these 2 words, the question mark should always be present somewhere on the content page. Now, this is like finding a needle in a haystack. We're not making it as concise and precise, and we are just taking a chance. In B, we wrote these 2 together, so made it slightly better than A. So B is better than A. And here the question mark would have the same function to find question mark somewhere on the paras or somewhere in the text of the content page with relationship to the word internet research, but no guarantees they would be posed or appear as a question with these 2 words somewhere in the lines of those pages. So again, taking a chance. However, B is better than A. In C, we have used the word what, and we have used internet research and put the question mark within quotes. So what is this going to do? First of all, what would be dropped or may not be mandatory or may appear somewhat somewhere with the word internet research on the content page. But here you're taking a chance where you are asking the search to find exact same sequence of how internet research continued with the question mark, or the question would end with the word research and the question mark. So that may or may not happen. So again, taking a chance. So it becomes difficult sometimes to phrase it where the question is posed and you want the search to respond to it as if it's a question of some sort. One of the things we can do as shown in D, here we have put what, where, how with the or operand or the vertical bar, which denotes or as a choice. So what we are doing is asking the search to find the word what, where, and how with relationship to internet research, somewhere ending with a question mark, and not making sure that all or any of these 3 words would somehow be part of the sentence or a question that contains either how, where, or what. So there is no guarantees. It would make it into a question, but this could be even a slightly better effort. Okay. So that's all we are saying. When you look at the last one, you see this inverted comma open. And this happens because it's quite often that this happens. And the reason is that quotation mark open and close, when we put it in a search bar, they're very small fonts. And we can't tell if it's open or close, or sometimes it is starting as open, and while you're writing it, it attaches to anything which is preceding it or is on the left of it. So it remains open, and it closes automatically. And it is not actually simulating or giving the instruction as if the term is inside of the quotes. If any of these open and close quotation marks are inverted or not opening or presenting open and close to include the term inside of it. I don't know if you're getting it or not, but let's suppose if I have to explain it slightly in more detail. Let's suppose we take an example of this one. I'm going to do it outside of the example of number 3, just to show you, then I'm going to delete it. So let's suppose you have these terms. And while you are separating or placing the comma, if I do it like this, sometimes instead of acting as a closed comma, against the open comma, which is starting the term inside of quotes, it might just not remain closed. This might just appear or somehow be an open quotation marks, because it may attach with, say, 2 over here while you're writing it. It's just the way the keystroke somehow misbehaves. Okay. So let's suppose I just wanted to separate it into 3 terms. So when I did this, I may have left this as open instead of close. Typically, this should be open and this should be closed for the term held inside of it. But what I'm saying is, at times this remains open also. So this open comma quotation marks and this remaining open would create a problem, and you will be, just um, you won't be able to guess what the problem is. You won't know what is going on. You're doing everything right, but it's not bringing the results. It's just this tiny thing that at times gives makes it into an incorrect query and hard to figure out. So I'm just emphasizing, a lot of times what I do is that when I'm separating the terms, I leave a gap over here, and then I put the quotation closed here, okay, against this. Or at times I do write the whole thing again like this, okay, so that I don't take a chance. And then I remove this gap. I'm sorry, the gap will remain intact. Let's suppose that this is what we intended to do. So to be safe, that's what I do, is I push whatever is after the comma, after the inverted comma open and close, to give it a space, and then I redo it, just not to take any chance, because that will spoil the whole query. So this is just some precaution. I thought I'd just mention it. This slide is something that I'd explained already, but it is good for reference. You should be able to, when you're reviewing the course, when you are preparing for the exam, these could work as short notes, all these slides that I'm showing you. And believe me that whatever gets done in the class is more than likely would appear in your exams also. So for that reason, it is also important for you to review these slides. Some of the slides for which you already have concept cleared up from, let's say, previous few slides, and it is just something that is emphasizing or re-emphasizing the same concept. Don't ignore it, just go through it quickly, so that you know that something typically that comes in the exam might be taken from these slides. So it's and it won't take too long to review them. These are all in PDF formats. So let's suppose we did this example, and here it is showing how the terms are separated. Like here, it is saying that it is now one term of two words, and by the way, this upward arrow is just denoting that there is a gap between the words. So literally, these are two words inside of the quotation marks. That's all it is talking about. Query splits into three terms, how you can make it into three separate terms, and so on. So that's the only significance of this slide. Uh, and here we are pretty much done with the quotation mark situation. However, what is now important is to start understanding and getting deeper concepts of Boolean logic. Boolean logic, what is that exactly? I mean, first of all, what is the algebraic expressions are just something that uh, basically works with objects which cannot be defined as exact numbers. So that's how the algebraic expressions or algebra was structured. So if I want to give a number, give a name against, or parse a value to an object that can be, let's say, an alphabet, we can use A as an alphabet, and we give it a number 1, and we say A is equal to 1, B is equal to 2, and so on. So these becomes algebraic expressions. And when the textual search is to be algorithmically controlled for fetching the right results, and the only way you can give instruction to it is through parsing or treating each of the word as an object. And the only mathematical expression that could safely maneuver and allow you to um, do calculations with, or attach or detach or add to or subtract from the word is to use the Boolean logic. So the Boolean logic would allow for the words to be compared as an option, to be added together as something that should make it into a phrase, but you want to ensure that it is two words combined together. So you want to use a plus sign, and instead of plus sign, you can use the Boolean words like A and D, for instance, to combine the two terms. So if A and B, you want them to be together, where A has a word is a word and B is also a word. You can use A and D in capital letters. That is a Boolean operator, and the importance of it is significant enough that without using Booleans, it's very hard to control the textual database. And also for different reasons, like when you look at the advanced search operators, you will see it will not execute as precisely unless they are nudged, forced, or restricted using the Booleans. So with the three Booleans that you probably already are familiar with, I'm going to, in any case, mention them through these slides. First of all, there are three of them: A and D, O, R, and NOT, all written in alphabets or in words. Hmm. Well, See, the animation is really interesting. I didn't see these slides for a long time. I think they've changed a bit. So we've got A and D, which is what is combining two words together or adding to the words or adding two terms on either side of it. The idea of A and D is to have something that it can connect with. So at least two of the words or two search terms have to sit on either side of it. Then you've got another one, which is OR, also in capital letters, which is giving a choice or giving a selection option for search to find either of the terms. Condition again, same. The words or the search terms have to be present on both sides of it, on the left of it and on the right of it. Whereas NOT is a little bit different in the sense that NOT can be used without having anything placed on either side of it. Instead of having two terms on left and the right of it, the NOT would work on something that is only exclusively on the right or placed on the right of it, as if it is something that needs to be eliminated from the equation or from the search query or the search terms that you have used. So these are the three ones that Boolean like to play with, apparently. This is another version. Just as I explained A and D, A and B means A plus B. So if you replace A and D with a plus sign or assume A and D to have an effect similar to plus sign, it would add the two terms A and B. OR means it would have an option to find either A or B, or both can be good, or find at least one of the two. Not is something which replaces or which is similar to when we use the minus sign and we want to eliminate something that is on the right hand side of it. So minus sign is exactly replacing NOT. The vertical bar here is actually a substitution for OR. I usually, my approach or the way I do my search, and I'm consistent with it, and I somehow feel comfortable using notations instead of the words, because I find that notations work better. I'm not claiming that it is so because it's written nowhere, and it is not something that I can safely say that you should prefer to do it my way, but this is how I do it, and I feel more comfortable. There's more accuracy in my personal opinion when I use, let's say, instead of OR, I would rather use the vertical bar. Anyway, about plus and NOT is a slightly different business for various reasons. I'm going to start a concept understanding here, which is absolutely very crucial for anyone who is going to give a CIRS exam. There is a lot more emphasis on why the quotation marks are substituted and where A and D is not. And throughout the book, one thing you will notice that I have not, especially in the Boolean section, I have not used A and D in the search queries. It's only quotation marks I've used. And that is something unusual. Obviously, this concept I'm about to explain is also there in the book, but I have literally replaced the quotation marks with the A and D. I'm sorry, the A and D with the quotation marks rather. Said it reverse. So let's look at the query right here. And here I'm going to then slightly, slowly, we will see how the quotation marks are the best option to replace A and D. Textual semantics and lexical semantics. These are the two search terms we want. Supposing we did not put textual semantics and lexical semantics within quotations, and we used A and D in between, which is typically how the search gets done with, I guess we could say that the common user. The likelihood of where something can go wrong is that if you wrote textual and semantics, where textual is and semantics is outside of the quotation mark, the search result, let's say in document 1, would bring something which has a partial letters or the partial word present, making a complete, even though it's a complete word, the word contextual, because contextual is turning up a part of it, which is what is starting from here, TEXTUAL, will be emphasized as if it is a match to the word textual, even though it is not contextual and it is textual, yet it will return incorrect results because it is also now starting. And this is what Google has started doing. It wasn't so before, but now it's doing it. It's a behavioral issue. Maybe they need a correction, but because it's a reality today, that's why I'm mentioning it. The word tech contextual would appear as if it is just as good as textual. So this is one situation, and we later we'll get to the quotation marks. But right now, I'm just giving you some of the ways search might differ in its results. So this might happen. And next thing is that the word A and D, or the Boolean A and D, will combine the word semantics and lexical together and make sure that these two words, lexical, semantics and lexical, are present. Okay. What is the behavioral limitations of any of these Booleans is that they think of letters or the objects or the words that are in its closest vicinity on either side of it to have a precedence for being found against or in comparison to the words that are on its extremities, like semantics and textual. Incidentally, the semantics is repeated here, but even if there was another word, instead of semantics, it was something else, then the precedence of finding the words that is closest, lexical and semantics, that is in its closest vicinity, will have a priority to be found. Okay, so that's how it is programmed. The result is that it will do all these combinations. It will find textual semantics, text semantics, see, text semantics. It will find even contextual semantics. So all these behavioral issues will start to happen. And now we are going to see how we can use the quotation marks to overcome this behavior. So we have now two terms, textual semantics and lexical semantics, within quotation marks. And the result would invariably would find both terms, textual semantics and lexical semantic, as mandatory terms, as if it is definitely, it is now emphasizing that it has to be found in the search results or the results are not acceptable. So this is very simple, but the elimination of the, okay, let me see, where is that slide here? Here is the elimination process of A and D. And this is what is important as a concept, why we want to replace A and D. Now watch carefully. In this one, you could see three words: Internet Research Specialist is the same as Internet plus Research plus Specialist. But here the plus sign is assumed to have a first go at finding three of these together in the same sequence. But the plus sign is not forced. Okay, it is assumed, but it is not forced. And it is assumed to be present where you have a gap between words. So basically three search keywords, each assumed to have a plus sign here. So we start with this, we start with A, with these three outside of the quotations. In the second one, we just carrying them forward. So bringing this here, we are now going to substitute the plus sign with the A and D operator. So in B, we have three words that we are using it with the A and D operator. So now the property of plus is no longer assumed to be priority, but rather has become a um, mandatory result to keep all three words intact and be present in your search results. Now, whenever we use A and D, it is only emphasizing to have all three words present, but not necessarily in the same order. It just means that the word internet and research and specialist have the property as if each of these are within quotation marks. So replacing A and D with replacing plus sign with A and D in instance B, so to make all three present. Now, carrying this forward in C, supposing if we did internet and research and specialist and we put individual words within quotation marks, wouldn't it act the same as mentioned with the A and D operator here? See what we did with A and D now here, we just took them out and we put individual words within quotation. Would it not do exactly the same as using the three words with the A and D operator? I just explained how three words would be present, but not necessarily in the same order. So basically, what the quotation marks did is that it emphasized that all of these words have to be present and that they have to be present on a content page anywhere in the textual context. It could be in the first paragraph, but they will all be there. So it really replaces A and D. Look at it carefully and you can see what I'm saying. Hopefully, we were understanding the substitution effect of A and D with the quotation marks. Taking it still further, in D, it's more like a revision. Okay. In D, you could see we've brought down these three words inside of quotes. And now we are saying it is not equal to, or it is not the same as putting these three words inside of the quotation, all of them, without putting A and D or without putting individually inside of the quotations. We have made it into a search phrase, put it within quotation marks. Now, the search results for what we have with individual words inside of quotes and with three inside of quotes as single search term would give different results. So these two ways of writing search query is different. Whereas in E, it is saying that internet research specialist within quotation is not the same as internet and research and specialist. It's not a quiz, but it is just a summary of what we have learned so far. This recaps the concept. Really, that's what I think. So all clear so far?
Yeah, all good for me.
Okay. Dorothy, Justin, James, Mike, all
Yes,
good?
yes, all good, all good.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Especially Mike, you've already. James, good? All good? Justin, good? Okay.
All good.
Okay,
Yeah, all good. Thanks, Naveed.
Thank you. Rather, it's I think we just overemphasized the concept, but it is good. It's sort of, it just would be something that you will not forget easily. Just all summary. Now, I'm going to talk about OR operator, what OR does. What is OR supposed to do in the first place? By definition, it is saying that the OR, let me reverse it a little. The OR is technically interpreted as at least one search term is required or more than one, like it can look for both of them, or all can be more than one, or all can be returned. So what it is saying is that, and if you look at it carefully, it says at least one search term is required between the two, at least. So there is no choice for the search but to find at least one of the two. Otherwise, the OR is not functioning. Next thing is more than find more than one means find both of them, or all can be returned, meaning that well, more than one meaning in the sense that if it was or used more than a few times, let's suppose or more than twice. So it is a longer choice. So more than one meaning if it is three options, then it can find two out of the three. So that's what it means. Or all can be returned means find all of them. That's what it means. So don't think more than one to have a meaning for two in comparison, but it could be more than two. So it is saying to find more than one, or all can be returned. Now, in effect, what the search is doing, let's say we have two words, pie or pudding. So pie or pudding means find either of the two. But when it says all can be returned, doesn't it mean that it also has a character similar to how A and D would bring all the terms intact together uh, as well? Or it is also emphasizing that if you cannot find both, if you cannot find one of them, find both of them. So that's what it is saying. So when we say or, it is not always a choice in the programmed search engine. The search engine is thinking, first, I'm going to attempt to find both. If I can't find both, I am given a choice to find at least one out of those choices. So that's how the search engine is thinking. On the other hand, if you want to be more accurate on how it is returning the results, think of A and D to have a precedence over OR as an option. So search would treat it as a and D instead of OR as a priority, because it is making an attempt to find both. And if it cannot find both, then it will go to the second option, which is find at least one, but not return without any of those choices. So in effect, what the query would do when you use OR, it is going to work as if it is an A and D or assumed A and D or something that is emphasized but not enforced. So A and D would have a precedence over OR, and therefore it will act to find all or both. If not, then it will look for at least one of the two. This is important. You will see why later on. Because when it starts returning results, you would say, okay, how come if I'd given it a choice, how come it has found everything that I've put in there as an option? I thought option means to find at least one. So would the option also mean to find both? That could be something in your mind. So this will ease it up, where A and D would be the first default action, and then the OR will kick in for its ability to look for at least one of those terms. This is a relationship. This is just mathematical or algebraic in the sense of conceptual clarity, but not important, not for the exam. And already but let's look at what they have said over here. So when we have an OR with X and Y as two search terms, all it is saying is to find X and or Y. or the impact of X with Y, or X similar to Y, or X within Y. So the relationship of the two terms that you put on either side of OR should have some relationship as to similarity or a substitution that could work, something that conceptually means the same but is phrased differently. So that's the idea of using OR operator. So don't put OR into use for terms that could be totally different or would have a different sense or a different meaning, because ideally the objective behind it is to look at it from the point of view of how the relationship exists. So this is just showing some examples of how you would word the relationships. So X within Y could be one relationship. And like I said, before you get confused on this or think of it as something that's part of the exam, I just don't want you to worry on it. It's not important. But let's say it was one slide that we had to run, and that's about it. So looking at quick illustrations, there are different ways of how the OR would behave. The one of them, how to, and then you put draw or paint within the parentheses. By the way, because we are discussing things in the algebraic sense, to give you an idea of, because sometimes when you're using too many instances of OR in the search box, you are sometimes also at the same time creating chaos for the search engine. And in what sense it is doing it or how it is going to interpret it will depend uh, on your understanding of algebraic, um, I guess, sense of how that query can be uh, can work along other operators where um, the OR might have a priority over A and, or A and can be used with the minus sign or a negative keywords. But what would work first? Um, in the algebraic expressions, you can see that whatever you put inside of the parenthesis gets resolved separately, and whatever gets resolved then gets attached to anything that is outside of the parenthesis. And so this is how the signs of how you put brackets and parentheses to control the function of algebraic expressions that you can recall from your school days, has significance for you to solve those equations. So for example, just take this one. And I wished I had better examples, but I think they will come along somewhere. I'm going to use the notepad again here. So I am talking about the OR, and I have copied and pasted this right here. So let's suppose this was the query where you want to make a comparison or give an option to the search to make or different or to find either the word raw or the word paint, and how you're going to write it in the search without parentheses, because you don't use parentheses. Parentheses, by the way, the search engine like Google would not entertain that or would not consider it um, as an enforced as an enforcer in defining your search. It would just ignore it totally. So that's the unfortunate part, that parentheses, lot of times you get to see in the articles on Google search, um, that you find that parentheses exists and it works, but in reality, it will not work. And it's not just by experimentation we are saying it, but rather Google has clearly mentioned in their notes that they don't accept parentheses. So let's suppose that this is the equation, not the equation. Let's say this is the query. We have used A and D and we have used OR. So when you have A and D with the word draw and the word OR here that is working with the word draw, the word paint, the way the search would react is that it is going to resolve only because you have or in between these two words, draw and paint. It will assume that this is in parentheses because of OR. Whenever you use OR, whatever term is closest to it would sort of simulate as if it is inside of the brackets and need to be resolved. Okay, so mathematically, in algebraic sense, if you had an equation like this, the OR would be resolved first before it can get attached to the word how to. So this A and D is, let's say, a plus sign, and I'm just making it into an equation. So draw or paint will be resolved first before it can connect to the word how to. Okay, so just remember that anytime you have multiple ORs and you have, quoted words that simulate A and D, you also would have to assume that certain things would work in a direction different from you would you would have imagined. Why? Because there is always this streak of algebraic concepts that works behind these booleans. So one of them, as I'm explaining, is that if you have the A and D, replacing it with the plus sign for now, and where OR is to be resolved, it will be resolved between these two options, the word paint and a draw. So whatever is the outcome of this will attach to how to. And it doesn't mean that it will end there because you have so many snippets coming back to you. In the third or the fourth snippet, you would find the word paint attached to how to. So it is a kind of a erratic behavior. It's not as controlled when you use OR. Okay. Anyway, this was the reason why they have the slide that is mentioning the parenthesis, when in reality parenthesis does not exist but is assumed. Okay. In the second instance, progressively you could see that this is how you would be writing the query ideally. And when you do that, you will get two outcomes. One would be how to draw and another one would be how to paint. It's not like one is chosen and that's the end of it, because there are several snippets. So you'll get different instances and different frequencies with which how to draw would combine together. For instance, how to draw would come maybe out of the 10 results you're seeing on the SERPs, maybe 8 of them would have how to draw, maybe 2 of them have how to paint. Okay, so that's how it will just start showing up. This is just the behavior that we have to keep in our mind. Now, in this, okay, there is one more. This one. Okay, so let's just do this one as well. So this is the same example, except that we have substituted these words. We are showing vacation and we are showing and London or Sofia. So what would be the result of this query? London or Sofia would get resolved first, and then it would emphasize or work with a reference to vacation, and you will get results shown similar to how we have equated it with the algebraic expression, translating these two. That's all, nothing really important. But what is more interesting are the slides starting from that has examples 1 through 7. These are different ways of how the OR is shifted, changed, and numerous words are used, so that you can look at the behavior of how some of the outcomes would result in the search snippets. In the first one, it is showing how to draw paint. So what will happen is when you have draw or paint, it will first of all try to find a page that contains both how to draw and how to paint. So that would be the default action. Next action would be similar to this, nothing spectacular about it. But let's look at the second example. This is just really for exercise for you to, see different ways in which you can place OR against the options. In the third one and the second one, primal and paleo recipes, where paleo recipes is not put inside of the quotation marks. It simply means that paleo and the word primal are two options, and the word recipe is something that it can connect with. And this is how you can check the behavior when you look at the results. You would even find paleo recipes and primal paleo recipes or primal recipes. You will see all sorts of combinations. So this is not as controlled. Now compare it with the third one, sausage biscuits and cheese sausage. This is more controlled because you have these within quotes and it is just comparing and looking for these two. But the default action again would be you will find both of these, the cheese sauce and sausage biscuit first. Later you will see their combination, you will see them as one of the choices that is appearing in the snippets. In the third one, in the fourth one, recipes, gravy, sausage. And you can see on the left hand side, you have three words. On the right hand side, after the or, there's just one word. So what will happen is the word sausage and biscuit would be the option, or gravy, sausage, and biscuit would become an option, or recipes, gravy, sausage would become an option against the biscuit. And if we want to emphasize that or emphasize that the word biscuit should be found, you may not be, you will be surprised to see that the word biscuit is not even showing in the search result. Even if you put the word biscuit within quotes, it will not be emphasized as if it is a mandatory return. What will happen with the or is that given the choice, it might just pick up these two words like gravy and sausage and bring them as a choice, or it would treat recipes along with the word sausage as combined words together, or even single words that would appear and leave out biscuit totally. So there is this behavior which is also not as controlled using OR. So be mindful of that, but you can make it better. These are just some ways in which it would react. That's the reason we are discussing it. Never mind what is on the right hand side because it will make it even more complicated. Easier explained as I'm doing right now. In the fifth example, the word sausage biscuit put within the quotation marks is emphasized as separated from the word recipe. Because of these two being within quotation marks, the word recipe and review are now going to work with or against each other to be found as a choice. And the word sausage biscuit will invariably will appear, whereas the word recipe and review will attach to the word sausage biscuit, and would act as a choice that eventually gets connected to sausage biscuit. But sausage biscuit will not remain a choice, but remain an anchor text or a text that will remain intact in the results as a primary search phrase, because it is inside of the quotation marks. And this is a better way of writing your search queries. Any word you want to be compared or to be treated as an option should usually appear on the right hand side as a choice and be singled out and separated from the term by putting the term within quotation, so to make it distinct and make it an anchor text or a primary text. Similarly, when you have a text paleo recipe and you have more than one options of OR, then you can imagine, let me just get to that slide. This one, it is going to make far too many combinations. And this is what is explained on the right hand side. You can interpret it later, but from the face of it, you can see that between sausage, cheese, and biscuit, it is making a choice. It can find both the words sausage and cheese um, together and leave out the word biscuit, or find cheese and biscuit and leave out sausage, and so on. So it is, kind of an erratic behavior of finding whatever is more popular as two terms or two keywords together, or those that are more prevalent as single keywords, and where the word cheese and biscuit is not as popular. But at the same time, know that whenever you're using OR and you're using words like paleo recipe within quotation, it is making a relationship automatically. So if a relationship uh, excludes from paleo recipe all three words, then the search will not bring any result back, assuming not in this case, because it is definitely going to be found. But if you had a term instead of paleo recipe, something that would not have any relationship with the choices that you're putting in there, as as a choice of words that any of these can combine with what you have within quotes, then your search will not perform. It'll just die totally, even with the OR. So this that you emphasize, put in quotes as the anchor text, is very important. Relationship is important for the choices, and that needs to be combined. That's all. That's all we have to worry about. What is the time right now? OR has so many other examples that I have to do. Unfortunately, I run out of time. Okay, so we still want to continue with OR. There'll be so many more examples of the behavior of how so far we have done the quotation marks, AND, and the OR. So with these three, we are going to look at some examples and variations of how the search results are going to perform. We would have about another half a session or another hour of explaining this in the next class. And after that, we are going to do the NOT or a minus sign, and that would finish up the booleans. But at the same time, don't forget, boolean is not just these three. There is notations and symbols also that are part of how the textual search is controlled, or what is recognized as symbols that has a meaning for the search results returned. So I also have to do that. So this part with the notations and symbols and whatever is left of the basic search operators, we'll finish up in our next class. Okay. So any questions that I can answer for you? Anything specific that you were thinking that you had a problem with? Because I know you're all using booleans for a long time, because that's where you can control your search. And during that, you may have had some questions or options that you thought would work and they didn't, they failed to execute. Any of those interesting thoughts or questions you may have, I'd love to answer that and even run those search queries. It just depends on how much you want to participate in something like this. And if not, I'm assuming that you're following whatever is explained so far. And still, if you have anything to ask, please put it during the session. You can put it in the chat window as well. Sorry, too much. Go ahead. Yeah.
Just had a quick question,
Yes.
and thanks for reminding me. Next time I'll put it in the chat. If we went back to the market research industry report example, with so with the or segment in that example at the end after market research,
Yes.
when we were putting report or study, will Google run some synonyms or alternatives in addition to those two, in addition to say study and report, if they're not in quotation marks?
Yes, it would do it exactly, because stemming and lemmatization is a process that is forced, only when the results or the content pages fail to find something which ideally should have been there, but it's not exactly easy to get to, or it feels that there is something that can be replaced for the word or the group of words. It would perform that function because it would not want to disappoint the user. Its primary goal is to bring anything that it can do to be able to produce something rather than nothing coming. So it always defaults to finding performing the semantics of stemming and lemmatization. But when you put something within quotation marks, it is forced to dig deeper or go deeper to find it. And supposing even with that depth, it is going to that making extra leg effort, it still cannot find it. It will look for stemming and lemmatization for that to get the substitute. And if that is not available, then it will just kill the query, and that's the last thing that you will see, that it is not bringing any results back. Rather, it would also recommend, if something is in quotes, it will say just open up the quotation marks, or did you mean this? So that kind of a behavior is embedded in the algorithms to the satisfaction of the user, based on the maximum effort that it would do, including stemming and lemmatization. So it doesn't go away.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And we'll do some examples based on what you're saying. And surprisingly, you will find that thing about Google is that it is always fine-tuning its algorithms. And anything that comes to us as a surprise or something new, we usually have a team that is constantly working on things like these. So it is not unusual for me to get a report like every 3-4 days that, this is what they found, this is the behavioral change, why it is so, and so on. So this is one of the things that we do in AOFIRS. And that keeps us really on our toes. And if something different comes up, I will be able to explain that to you, even if it's not in the book. So anyway, thank you so much for your time and for spending your evening with me today. I hope to see you day after. And thank you. Have a great evening. Bye bye.
You too. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye bye. Bye
Bye-bye.
everyone.